budget. We talk about the increase in employee contribution to health insurance premiums. And maybe in your mind that's not innovative. Maybe that's something that should be expected. But those are examples of things that we've worked on: plan design changes, targeted contractual reductions, conference travel curtailment. We're noting the budget task force as an example of work to be provided, going forward, sorts of ideas.
Yeah, I wouldn't use the word innovative around them. They're standard sort of practices. The innovation, we hope, will come in with the budget task force. That's the group where we're going to have people to bring us ideas, look at new ways, examine expenditures.
Just let me go. The other one is the going paperless.
Yes.
We talk about promoting the growing use of vendor and student ACH payments versus sending physical checks to our vendors or paying our student refunds with checks. That seems like that's an idea that in theory is long overdue, but yet it takes an administration to make the decision we're going to accomplish that. So I'd like to be able to have our team take credit for that. In addition, information technology projects through HR and our technology team, financial system upgrades, implementing the absence management and time and labor systems. These will be things that are going to produce great value to us, and hopefully will help show, help confirm where those trends are going and why. And then just from a bookstore standpoint, helping students be able to access lower cost books. Well, that may not show up in our number. That's certainly going to show up in the student's pocketbook because we can help them access lower cost instructional materials. So those are things that we're excited about.
But Dr. Weber, didn't the administration in a recent update talk to us about hiring less adjunct faculty because there's less sections being taught?
Yeah, that's right.
And therefore, fewer students, less sections taught, fewer adjunct faculty, more savings to the college.
Right. Yep. That's right.
But I don't see that as okay, I used the term innovative because when you have fewer students, you obviously have fewer support staff, right? So we shouldn't be applauding a reduction
those are standard. That's pretty standard.
a reduction in our operating budget because we have fewer students. I mean, I don't understand that.
But you're getting fewer revenues because of that too, so you're balancing.
Of course. But
You want to set the bar higher for us. I understand.
Right, but I like the budget committee that you have where you're self-examining and every department is looking at how they can save costs. I mean, that's what we
Corporations
got
in
there.
Lake County use things like Six Sigma and the lean methodologies to really improve how they operate. And I think that's the kind of expectations our board has of us. They're expecting us to apply some management discipline and really kind of counting on our governance task forces and our budget work to help us find those ideas and so we can report back more exciting things at future meetings, right?
at least move the needle a little bit.
Gotcha. And then just as one of the final slides, it talks about the reminders of our list in the budget. You all know this, but obviously budgets are built on assumptions, and by definition, assumptions are usually wrong because actual activities take place. So we're assuming that the 2% enrollment, in terms of state aid, we're assuming that the state funds us at 80%. We also there could be potential pending legislation that freezes property taxes or shifts pension responsibilities onto the district. And then finally, we will work hard to make sure our auxiliary enterprises break even as opposed to lose money. But there's always that risk that they don't. And our budgets needs to be aware of that. And then the final two slides, I'm just pointing out that when our board policy, on slides 23 and 24, I'm just pointing out that there's other funds besides the general operating fund or the education fund that this budget also includes. And our book does a nice job documenting those resources and those commitments. And just as a nod to them on 24, we summarize those other funds that are part of this budget book and the assumptions that are built into those as well, even though the largest portion of our work really is the education fund. But we're not required to make sure that we budget for the full shebang, which is all of these funds that are here. So for example, you'll see the audit fund, we're budgeting to do our audit. We're budgeting to make sure there's an insurance reserve. We want to make sure there's sufficient working cash on hand, so this budget book makes those assumptions, and they're reflected on this slide here.
Before you move on, let me ask you, this liability protection, it makes sense to have the reserve for certain liability protection. my question is it reasonable to have maybe a footnote to talk about the pension possible shifting to the local budgets?
Sure.
That- And,
We can do that.
I mean, just so that we can keep our eye on that number, and we can listen to the conversation in Springfield about how close are we getting to that, and if we're getting to that, because that's gonna be a big number.
Could be.
We do already have a number, don't we?
I'm sure we do. Maybe Andy, are you aware? If that number was to shift, what would that be, the impact on the district? Or-
Yeah,
Guys
yeah,
remember
that's
that?
what we,
You know, the
That's a
ICCTA,
the pension liability, the total liability to share for
Yeah.
this district is over $300 million.
that's exactly right, so
That's
that's
the
a number that we
liability.
should just keep our eye on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, but it's also the annual
That's a big
contribution
number.
requirement that would be the real thing that, and so
Right.
that's probably in the millions of dollars, right?
Right,
Yeah.
right.
It certainly is.
Caveats.
I estimate it'd be about 26
Per year?
million. So, I mean, that's just my,
Ouch.
my estimate. So I think it's necessary to have some kind of,
Okay.
point here. Maybe just, you know, maybe around,
The size of the.
Well, in addition to footnoting the presentation, we'll make sure that there's some documentation.
yes,
about it,
yes.
too.
Just so we can keep our eye on that, because, you know, if the conversation shifts, then we need to sprint.
Along with that, I think in your projections, Kim, we need to be thinking about if it's 6.4% from the state next year, and 80% funding, we need to be thinking about 5% in coming years, maybe 4%. I think you think
Build
of
that
that.
into our projections.
Yeah, keep this dependent on the state, keep going. Eventually that number will be zero.
We'll do.
You know, getting back to the pension though, in all the conversations over the past 5-6 years, there's never been a conversation about shifting pensions all at once. It's always been at the most 0.5% a year annually. So, and also that comes to about, the whole thing works out with actuaries and everything to be about a 12% transfer ultimately. But with the shift and full funding coming from the local districts, it ends up being about 7 or 8 years because you're also chipping away at the top end of the pension liability, and it doesn't take the full 12 years to get to that number. And therefore, the actuaries have always been consistent in doing it in 6, 7, 8 years. So, and 0.5% of your entire compensation from the college, it's a doable figure, but it's going to hurt.
Yeah.
All right, can I ask a question going back to page 14? And because what I'm asking about is the state funding, because we're doing this with an assumption of a 20% reduction in state funding. I agree with what Chairman Griffin said, that we need to be ready for contingencies if it doesn't work. First, I want to say, I think you all should be commended because we've been able to continue to operate, we've been able to continue to do all our capital projects other than the ones that are stymied by the state. But at least thus far, we've gotten the science building underway. So it's really not been an interruption of services, which is, under the circumstances, I think commendable. But help me understand here about the 20% reduction in state funding, because would we say this year that we've gotten 80% of our state funding? I would say
27%.
not remotely, right? And I don't know exactly the numbers, but I would say it's not remotely. So we've gotten like 27% of our state funding this year, is that right? So I understand that this is the budget and you're not gonna like plan for 27% at this point, because you're going to be somewhat optimistic, but let's also be realistic, because we have to get through this year too.
I can be sure my thinking, and then you guys can discuss it, but we kind of started this exercise thinking 50%. Let's just assume that the state cuts in half. What will we need to do to balance? I learned from my colleagues around the state, though, is that most of them are assuming 90%, because that's what the governor's budget calls for. So we thought taking an 80% position might be more conservative. When we attended our legislative meetings a couple of weeks ago, and I'm sure you guys heard different information too, but we were being told by our lobbyists that 90% to 95% was what the governor was going to approve and pass, but no less than 80% is what we were being told. So we changed our modeling to include 80%. We're still working on a lower scenario for our budget task force in the event that the worst case does happen. And that's why on that other slide, we kind of note you that we're prepared to, or on this slide, we will come back to the board and revise this budget if the state comes in lower.
We've told the employee groups that if the, I think the real danger, I think they'll really pass something with 90% funding for us. I think the real problem was that Leslie Munger said to the board, here, you're in line with everybody else if they don't pass the revenues, so you'll be back to what happened in 2009 and 10 and 11 there, where you had delayed payments and, you know, you were getting sporadic payments, and then we're gonna have to make the estimates somewhere along the line. You know, we're gonna have to make some hard choices if that scenario plays out.
And I think the other thing we need to be cognizant of as well, and Ken, you might want to give this some thought. No matter what the figure is, if it's 80% or whatever, it's still not all coming in this fiscal year. It's going to come in next fiscal year, at least some of it. You know, so then looking forward, I wouldn't put it past our wonderful minds that we have in Springfield, that the dollars for FY16 that we're going to get in FY17 will then reduce those dollars as well. So it becomes a vicious catch-up kind of game.
That's happened before.
Yeah.
Make sure we don't lose sight of the strong possibility that that's going to happen.
Will do. I just had one final slide. I was just next steps, and so obviously from the next steps perspective, we'll be coming back in the next board meeting to request a modest O&M transfer to, you know, balance out this year's budget. Then next fiscal year, we'll be working to monitor the state budget, holding the required public hearings, and then seeking your approval to adopt the 17 budget. And then immediately, we'll be working on the 18 budget, revising our budget development calendar, holding our retreats sooner, so we could be all working together on this, kicking off our task force, and then obviously continuing to monitor legislation. So that's all.
I have a question. You mentioned that you think that not more than 2.7 million. You think it's going to be in the ballpark of $1 million?
Possibly, yeah.
So what is that contingency, that differential, the 1.7? What are you thinking about what that could be?
It's just either items like getting spent, projects that we thought related, lapse period spending, just projects lapsing. That we're just not aware of now, but likely occurred. And when you see that trend on slide page 11, if you look at that trend in that blue bar, I know the orientation could be a little more exaggerated, but you could just tell that there's the 16 bar is a little bit higher than what you would have thought a normalized spend would be. So that's what's giving you a little bit of hope that it won't be as much as we're seeing.
So the pictures,
Yeah.
pictures show you this. Right?
Bill?
Yeah.
On this annual budget here, I don't know if this is something you guys have discussed, but there's an organizational chart in here. I guess from my perspective, I would like to see the Board of Trustees as being part of the organizational chart. I think on
That's
page 5.
You can fix that.
It just seems like, how could you not put in the Board of Trustees?
And then some other charts typically might include the community or the students too, so we can fix that. Thank you.
Good. Good idea. Okay, anything else? All right, do you have anything else?
Nope. No, thank you.